Hi guys, in this video I'm going to walk us through how to create a dealing limit model for a bank. Banks need to allocate dealing limits for its traders. However, in my experience as a market risk manager, this limit setting has been arbitrary. Thus I came up with a scientific means of allocating dealing limits using some basic parameters that most traders should have. Our limit is also dependent on the capital position of our bank. Let's call our bank Model Bank A. Now, Model Bank A has a capital position of $2 billion, and this is how it's going to work. We are going to cascade these limits basically downwards to all the different traders and approval lines. So, individuals or traders who are within the analyst to associate cadre, we can basically get up to 4.5, have a single trading transaction limits of up to 4.5% of the bank's Model Bank's A's capital position, and this translates to 90 million for a single trade for individuals who are between the analyst to associate cadre, while senior associates to vice presidents have a limit of up to 7.7% of the bank's position, and this is 140 million. And like that, this is how we've allocated up to. Now, these are limits that go up to that particular percentage, but then there are also other limits that limits the transactions, or the limits that are allocated to traders. And these are the parameters I set for. We've already talked about grades. Now, these are the different grades in the dealing room that are within Model Bank A. We start from the analyst to senior analyst, associate, senior associate, assistant vice president, all the way to managing director. Then we have different years of experience, dealing room experience, and we start from 0 to 2 years, all the way to above 8 years within with dealing room experience. Then on the particular individual trader's desk, we're also going to look at what their contribution to profitability on that desk is. And then we have the various limits, like say less than 10%, less than 15%, all the way to a contribution of above 25% of that particular desk's profits. Then we go to qualifications, and this is a yes or no parameter. Basically, if the dealer has an ACI qualification, he gets a dealing limit, and if he does not or she does not, then he automatically does not get a limit allocated to them. Also, we look at past precedents in utilizing limits that dealers have held in the past. Have they utilized a large proportion of what has been allocated to them in the past, or is the limit too large? This is also quite important because we do not want to advance a dealing limit to a trader that hasn't utilized most of it before. This could give room for extreme transactions that could put the bank at risk, particularly on bad trades that are quite huge. So we have for utilization, we have below 50% utilization, below 75% utilization, all the way to 90% and above utilization. Also, we consider the bank's appetite. Is the bank, particularly at this point in time, willing to take risks? If it is, then we advance a higher limit to the individual or to the dealer than if the bank wants to be more conservative. And we also have the volume of trading for that particular desk or that particular individual. We also look at the exceptions that the dealer might have incurred over in the near past. This would also be used as a parameter to judge whether that trader should have a limit or not. And then we look at the leadership position the individual holds within that team. So these are all the various parameters that we're going to consider. Going to the dealing rating page, we've already talked about grades. Now these are the grades that we have within the dealing room for Model Bank A. We have analysts, senior analysts, associates, all the way to managing director. And the second parameter we'll be looking at is the years of dealing room experience. Here we have the first band between 0 to 2 years, going all the way to the last band above 8 years. And then we have the dealer's contribution to trading income for that particular desk, which is less than 10% all the way to above 25%. Here we have a qualitative parameter, which is the ACI qualification. Basically, dealers either have that qualification or they do not. It's important because if a dealer does not have this qualification, he or she is automatically disqualified from having a dealing limit. We also have utilization of previous limits. So traders that have in previous times utilized their limits will also be graded on this point. We have below 50% all the way to above 90% utilization of previous limits if they've had it before. And then we go to the bank's appetite. Basically, is the bank being conservative, or is it super aggressive at this point in time? We also have the volume of trading that the dealer has done within the past period of time, near recent periods. Then we go to exceptions that the dealer might have had, from 0 to 10 exceptions. And then we go down, final parameter we're going to analyze is the leadership position an individual within the bank and a dealer within the bank holds. Either the dealer is a team member, a unit head, a chief dealer, or is the treasurer. Moving on to our dealing rating stage. Here we see the different weights that these parameters hold. You'll notice that ACI qualification does not have any weighting, and this is because it's a qualitative, not a quantitative parameter. For grades, the grade of the dealer allocates 15%, is responsible for allocating 15% of the dealing limits. Years of dealing experience, 30%. Utilization of past limits is 5%. The bank's appetite is 10%. Contribution to trading income, 10%. Volume of desk trading activity, 10%. Number of exceptions the individual has contributes 10%. And then we have the leadership role, which contributes 10%. I'm going to analyze dealer 1 to show you how this works. Using dealer 1 as our example, the first port of call is to create a drop-down list for all our parameters. I'm going to use the grade as our example parameter drop-down list. The first thing we do is go to the Data tab and click on Data Tool. Now, while I'm recording this, I can see the drop-down list, but I noticed that you wouldn't be able to see it, so I'll just walk you through. You click on the Data Tool, and then under Settings that comes up, you see Validation Criteria. You click on List, and then go to Source. And then when it takes you to where your source parameters are, you highlight all the list array you want to use, which in this case are the grades, and then click on OK after you've done this. Now that I've done that, I select the grade for this individual. Let's say he's a senior associate, and then you do this for each individual. You'll notice that if I change for each parameter, you notice that if I change his grade to, say, to that of an assistant vice president, the grade allocation changes, and that is because we've also used formulas to drive this model. Now, the first parameter, which is the ACI qualification, we basically put it that if the dealer has an ACI, if his ACI qualified, then he's entitled to a limit. If he is not, he's not entitled to a limit. Going with grade, starting with the grade, the second parameter, which is our first qualitative parameter. For individuals or dealers that are analysts, they are allocated 10% of this parameter, 25% if they are senior analysts, all the way to presidents and above who are allocated 100% of this parameter. We move on to years of dealing room experience, and individuals who have 0 to 2 years experience are not entitled to limits. This is because dealers who have less than 2 years experience are deemed to be trainee dealers, and they are supposed to understudy the main dealers and not engage in transactions themselves. So individuals that have 2 to 3 years of dealing room experience get 50% allocation of this parameter, all the way to individuals who have above 8 years who are allocated 100% of this parameter. Then we go to the bank's appetite, basically how aggressive or conservative the bank is. This is not dependent on the dealer per se, but on the bank as a whole. And we have 10% if the bank's appetite is low, extremely low, 50%, and all the way to high and extremely high, which allocates 100%. Trading income is driven by the contribution of this individual to the trading income of his desk. If it's less than 10%, then the individual is allocated 50% of this parameter, less than 15%, 60%, all the way to 125%, where he's allocated 100% of this parameter. Next, we go to volume of trading activities. If it's extremely low, it's 10%, all the way to high and extremely high, where 100% of this parameter is allocated. And then we move on to exceptions. Basically, if an individual has 0 exceptions, he's allocated 100% of this parameter. 80% is allocated if he has 1 exception, 60% if he has 2 exceptions, 40% if he has 3 exceptions, and any exception limits above 3, he gets allocated 0% of this parameter. And then we go to the leadership role. A team member gets 0% allocation for this parameter, while a unit head gets 50%. If the dealer is a chief dealer, then he gets allocated 75% of this parameter, and the treasurer himself is allocated 100%. Moving to the final limit allocation. For dealer 1, we see who is a senior associate. We see he gets 12.6 million based on his grade score, 13.5 million based on his experience score, 7 million based on his utilization score. His appetite score is $11.9 million. The trading score is 10.5 million. Risk activity is 11.9. Given the fact that he has no exceptions, he has 14 million. As he has no leadership position, he gets allocated $0 for this, and his tentative score is 81.4, or rather his tentative dealing limit is $81.4 million per transaction. Lastly, we go to the ACI qualification, which is a qualitative parameter. It's a yes or no parameter. If he has a limit, then he's allocated 1. If he doesn't have, that will be not applicable. Given the fact that he does have a qualification, this does not affect him, and he has a final limit allocation of 81.4 million. But let's edit him a bit. Going back to our dealer rating page. For example, if we say dealer 1 has, let's say, 3 exceptions, we notice that his final dealing limit drops to $73 million. If we edit this further and we say he's not ACI qualified, we notice that he has no limit allocated to him. Let's put that back. His limit is back. However, if we say he has 0 to 2 years of dealing room experience, we also notice that he's not allocated any limit. And this is because these two parameters, ACI qualification and years of dealing experience, have a bit of a qualitative aspect to them. If you do not have an ACI qualification, you do not get a limit. And if you have 0 to 2 years of dealing room experience, then you also are not allocated a limit, because it is assumed that you are a trainee dealer and you are still understudying the main dealers. So that's it. That's how to build a dealer limits model. Thanks guys for sticking around and watching this video with me. Bye for now.